Hey, everybody. So, one of President Trump's first acts as president, as many of us remember back in January, was to issue an executive order titled Prioritizing Military Excellence and Readiness. And this specific policy reinstated a prior Trump policy during his first administration that basically bans transgender people from serving openly in the military unless they meet certain narrow criteria. Well, apparently, many of those service members, particularly those who served in the Air Force in particular, were recently told that they are no longer going to receive a military retirement. So let's talk about it. Welcome to another episode of the Holy Politician podcast. So, this is what the president's executive order read in January. Quote, consistent with the military mission and longstanding DoD or Department of Defense policy, expressing a false gender identity divergent from an individual's sex cannot satisfy the rigorous standards necessary for military service. Beyond the hormonal and surgical medical interventions involved, adoption of a gender identity inconsistent with an individual's sex conflicts with the soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle, even in one's personal life. A man's assertion that he is a woman and his requirement that others honor this falsehood is not consistent with the humility and selflessness required of a service member. End quote. No lies were told there. Not one lie was told about the false representation and identification of what gender identity now has become. And that if you were to make up false statements and believe in something that is make believe, that cannot possibly meet a rigorous standard for military service and military integrity. There still has been no research to date, and I'll wait, that shows that there is a direct link between what somebody says they feel like they are in their brain or in their body in comparison with what they are born with biologically and how those two things are at odds with one another. And so, for a man to assert that he is a woman or for a woman to assert that she is a man, that at its core is a dishonorable statement and it is a falsehood. And it's not consistent with the integrity that is required of anybody who serves in the United States military, which is why I said no lies were told. And so now this is causing a bit of consternation amongst existing military members or recently discharged, or whether most of them were honorably discharged, who feel like they should get the benefits of a retirement, particularly if they almost worked 20 years, if they almost served for 20 years and were asked to leave the military, they feel that they earned a 20-year retirement. Even though they didn't serve for 20 years, they feel like since essentially they're getting kicked out, they should reap the full benefits of a full 20-year retirement. Take a look at this clip.
I still want to serve. I still want to serve people. I still want to serve this country.
Ryan Gunderman served in the Army for nearly 8 years before she voluntarily identified, now waiting for official separation.
You know, I really wish that news organizations would stop placating these people and endorsing the tomfoolery of somebody wanting to be a woman who's a man. This is a very handsome man. Ryan was born beautifully. Look at him, he's super handsome. And yet the news reporter is calling him a she when I'm very much looking at a man who decided one day that he wanted to be a woman. So we've got to stop buying into the lies. But my point is Ryan was a very handsome man. I'm sure he would have been fine to remain as a man. And instead of forcing the rest of the world, including the United States military, to endorse his make-believe life.
I was on the cusp of being able to serve as who I am.
These military service members are preparing to start over. The new headshots just...
And all of these people that you see as who appear to be men were biological females. If you see somebody who appears to be a female in this clip, they are biologically male.
The first step for the career military members now uncertain about where they'll work next, when they'll see a paycheck, how long they'll have health care, even where they'll live. It's a snapshot of the new reality for transgender service members after a Trump administration policy kicked in this month, effectively prohibiting transgender people from military service. The deadline just passed for active trans service members to identify themselves under orders from the Department of Defense. Of the 2.1 million members, the Defense Department says transgender people make up just over 4,000. About 1,000 stepped forward before the deadline. Those who did not now face a waiting game.
I'm not prepared to walk away from this. I don't have very much time to plan.
Master Sergeant Nick Wright with
Master Sergeant Nick Wright is a woman, even though you will hear the news reporter refer to him as a he is a she.
the Army National Guard is just a few months shy of
I mean, you can only almost deduce how this person very likely had a double mastectomy if you peek through her cut off Ohio Pride shirt.
18 years of service and says he won't get the benefits he's earned.
I've given up 18 years of my life for this. Am I entitled to it? I mean, yeah, I should be, but it's more than that. It's bigger than.
And I think that's part of the problem that we're dealing with in American society is this generation of people, post the greatest generation, so including my generation, I'm Generation X, this generation really thinks that they're entitled. And I feel like because we think we're entitled to so many things, and I can absolutely throw myself into this matrix of entitlement. I pray for God to deliver me every day from entitlements and that I will die to myself every day. But it's like we're just bored. We're bored, so we got to make up stuff, right? If you live in a third world or impoverished country, you're not trying to make up stuff like, oh, I want to be a man today, or I want to be a woman today, or I want to be gender fluid today. It's because we are bored and we are entitled. And obviously, we're allowing the enemy to confuse and disrupt and cause us to live in a state of delusion. But it's like this spirit of entitlement that we need to buy into your fake, fictitious, make-believe world that you want to be something that you obviously biologically are not. That is the downfall of entitlement that we're seeing today.
The Department of Defense did not respond to direct questions about soldiers' benefits after service. It did say that this is not a ban, rather a policy against those with gender dysphoria, the medical term for when someone feels their gender identity doesn't match their sex at birth. And the department fully intends to treat everyone impacted by the policy with dignity and respect.
No more dudes in dresses. We're done with that.
And like, how can you be mad at Pete Hegseth, right? We don't want to see dudes in dresses anymore. I used to see videos of these supposed military leaders at the Pentagon behind the podium. You're looking at a man in a woman's uniform, looking like a woman because he was a woman. He was a man, but he was pretending to be a woman. Like, how can any country take you seriously? No country is going to take you seriously when you do stuff like that. You sit down, you try to negotiate the end of a war or whatever you try to do. No country is going to believe you. They're going to make fun of you. They're going to ridicule you. And then they're going to go behind your back and try to attack your country. And so this doesn't necessarily mean that we don't treat people humane, right? People deserve some level of humanity, even if they've got some kind of mental condition going on, even if because uh, tons of medical professionals and people have lied to them about who they are and about how they can get treatment and about what the world and these fake, like the American Psychological Association and all of these associations are making up data that is just false and fictitious to endorse this kind of foolishness. And so we still need to treat people with humanity, but that doesn't mean that we're going to buy into your lie and be in this matrix of confusion. We're not going to do it. So I want to show another clip that is from the Biden administration where the Biden administration permitted a lot of this and allowed it to kind of metastasize to what we saw prior to Trump coming back into office.
Department lifted one of the last bans on service in the armed forces. Transgender people will now be allowed to serve openly, and they will be eligible for any medically necessary care, including surgery.
Now, one would think that this was a Twilight Zone episode, but it's not a Twilight Zone episode. This is a very real media clip from NBC. And this news reporter who presents as a man, maybe he is a transgender man and was born a biological female because he's way too giddy for this news segment for me. And this is not the Twilight Zone. This is a real news segment.
David Martin is at the Pentagon tonight.
Transgender people were the last service members who could be kicked out not for something they had done, but simply because of who they were. Defense Secretary Carter ended that today.
Effective immediately, transgender Americans may serve openly, and they can no longer be discharged or otherwise separated from the military just for being transgender.
Estimates of the number of transgender people in the military range from a low of 4,000 to a high of 11,000 out of a.
That's a significant difference between the numbers that the Trump administration reported. So I'm curious, did the numbers diminish because Trump came back in and people started trying to hide their identity? Likely.
Total force of 2 million. Army Reserve Captain Sage Fox found her career put on hold after she changed genders, even though she says it made her a better officer.
Transitioning has allowed me to be better as a leader. I've gotten rid of the distraction of worrying about concealing who I really was.
Fox had to rely on private insurance to cover her surgery, but from now on, the military will cover the cost of sex change operations approved by a doctor.
Now, there's a couple of thoughts that I have about the last part of that video. One is she said she feels like her service has gotten better, that she's become a better leader because now let's be very clear about these pronouns. He feels like he's a better leader. Okay. Now, I want you to be honest with me. If you were to send your son and your daughter into the armed forces, one of the many branches that exist, and your son and your daughter calls you one day and says, Mom, Dad, my master sergeant is so and so, and she used to be a he, but now she's a she. Now he's a she, right? Now, would you trust this person to lead your son and daughter in any kind of military strategy or to participate in any type of true uh, army fighting? I don't have the right vernacular because I wasn't in the service, but to go into some kind of theater overseas and to lead a group of troops, to do anything. Would you trust this person with your son and your daughter and want them to allow them to lead them anywhere? I'm telling you right now, I wouldn't want that for my son or my daughter because it's make believe, right? This person has made up an entire world that does not exist. And so, where is the truth in that? How can you believe anything that this person says? And then the other thing that they said at the very end of that news clip is that the government was paying for these people to get the surgeries and the procedures that they needed. So that meant that your tax dollars were going toward double mastectomies and cross-sex hormone therapy treatment and well, not puberty blockers if they're grown, but medications, because lots of people that transition, they have to take medications for the rest of their lives. And so you, as the American taxpayer, were footing the bill. And so I much rather foot the bill for a student who went to a high school, worked their butt off to get a high GPA, to go to college. Maybe they came from an underserved background. Their parents couldn't afford to send them to college. They had to take out student loans, and they really can't buy a house because their student loans are exorbitant. And so we offer them public service loan forgiveness. I'd much rather my tax dollars go to paying down that debt of that deserving student who was born a he and stayed a he than somebody that is in this world of make believe and they're living out their, some of them are living out their fetishes in the United States military. I don't want my taxpaying dollars going to that. And so the fact that there is a coverage that is being provided through military to these people in the military through tax dollars from you and I for them to live out this preposterous world that they're living in blows me away. And it should blow you away too. And so, even though we may not like all of the things coming out of this administration, there are a number of things that we can celebrate, especially as members of the body of Christ. So, I hope that you learned something new from this podcast, that you will share this podcast with 2 to 3 of your friends, and I would love your comments. Don't hesitate to comment and to like, subscribe, and share. God bless. Until next time.